Ladies and gentlemen, SDC Rhythm XP in the middle of the coronavirus crisis. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for talking about whatever there is that we can talk about. Where are you all? Well, let's start top left. Steve, where are you? We should be at the same place where Janet is, I guess. Where's that?
Yeah, we're both in our homes in Florida.
Oh, you're in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then
right now we're about 10 feet away.
Okay, great. It looks like Steve has a nice place somewhere outside there on the porch.
Outside.
Yeah. And then Justin is on the top right?
Yeah, I'm probably the farthest away. I'm in North Dakota. I'm in Fargo.
North Dakota.
Yeah.
It depends on what Zoom background he uses, because sometimes he's in Spain.
So which rules do you have to follow more, like the Canadian rules or the US rules?
We're about 2 minutes from the border. Sure. Yeah. It's
right. Beautiful. Do we have snow there still?
It's melted. Yeah. Actually 60-degree weather. It's beautiful here, which doesn't make it easy that we're not skydiving.
Yeah. Drew, where are you hanging out?
I am just still at home in North Carolina, and excited to see the back end of this thing.
Yeah. We every week, we're somebody's a friend of mine, and I was saying, well, we're missing another Tom's Pizza outing with the families on Wednesday. He says, well, you have to look at it like every week we're getting closer to the end by 1 week. Just the other Drew, right next to the other Drew.
The other Drew. I'm at my house in South Carolina.
South Carolina.
20-minute drive from Doug's house in South Carolina.
Is that near Chester? I mean, that's where you used to jump, right?
Yeah, it's pretty close. About a 15-minute drive to the drop zone.
And Doug at the same place?
Yeah, just a little bit farther north, but in South Carolina as well.
Okay, so you used to live close by to each other anyway, already.
Yeah,
we used to live together close by.
Very close.
We lived together for quite some time.
In Chester, I mean your families, or I mean or at the university. I mean, you lived in Chester, both of you, right?
The town next to Chester, yeah.
Oh, the town next to Chester. Okay, so back to the roots. And Janet, we know already. But well, how does every survive without four-way indoor and outdoor?
Yeah.
How's it going? I mean, what are you doing? I mean, you guys are pros. How do you make are you unemployed now? How do you make a living without, you cannot train and compete. You cannot work to make money. Drew Starr is probably in a pretty safe situation because he is still employed by the U.S. Army. Drew, I guess, right?
I am. Yeah, we're teleworking on the Army side. We're teleworking, so I'm here in my office, and I actually spend probably more time in front of a computer, planning and doing PowerPoint and making plans to come back from the coronavirus pandemic, and working on ways that the Army can help the surrounding community and stuff like that. So off of the skydiving side, the Army's still relentlessly pursuing a mission to help out our nation and communities.
Yes, we hear that all the time, and we appreciate that. It's a question, how can you really help? That's a big question, that everybody's question. How, what is the best we can do to help each other? But I want to stick to the gun as much as possible, because I don't want to get into political or economical issue is an issue, because where I just started, I recently, for some reason, by coincidence, a topic came up. The pros, the full-time, the amateur, the recreation, it's in our sport. You are, let's say, at least pros or full-time or whatever. So how do you do that? I'm in a similar boat, but how do you do it? How do you get through this whole thing right now?
Yeah, I think we felt like first, you know, as important as training is to us, and it is very important to us, we just felt like it was important that we also, that this coronavirus epidemic, and that we just follow the guidelines and set a good example. And so for us, that was important to follow. And then from there, just make the best of it that we can. Get in shape, stay in shape, stay connected, stay as current as we can. We have these calls twice a week. We review video, we engineer dives, we catch up with each other. We talk about, you know, specific things and long-term things, and just you know, a lot of the stuff that we maybe even wouldn't get to spend as much time on if we were in the thick of training. So
do you work out together too? I don't know if you saw the video from ISR Fireflash, that quarantine challenge they had posted, where they're dirt diving together.
Oh, no.
Like everybody, they made some jumps, and then everybody was walking it while they're looking at the screen, and you can probably do the same with a workout.
Yeah.
So today, 10 push-ups now, everybody down on the ground. That's not.
Yeah, we're not. I mean, we share workout goals with each other every week, workout and visualization and video review and those kinds of goals every week.
And then part of our video conference, we don't walk the dives, but we have a draw that we talk about engineering, just to stay fresh and keep our minds on that.
Yeah, that was another topic that recently came up. I'm kind of running slowly out of fresh content too, because there are no scores and no videos and all that kind of stuff. But it's not really such a terrible thing, because I can finally dig into things which are in the archives, which are not published, but they are there. And some of that stuff is really interesting, especially the interviews, with people which were just written down. And one of them was with this with a sports psychologist or mental training therapist. I don't know exactly, the definition of it. John de Rosalia. I don't know if you have ever met him or heard about him. And so mental training and visualization and becoming stronger in this area, that's a great opportunity actually for now too, isn't it?
For sure.
Are you doing this somehow together as individuals, and what do you do?
Yeah, our main focus has really been, we've been sending out a set of dives that we visualize with each other and talk about engineering. We watch several videos together, but as far as the mental performance stuff, I think that's a very good point, but we haven't made that a deliberate portion of our team discussions yet, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, because you have to do this as an individual anyway. Yeah. Dr. John, he said, of course, you have to start as an individual with mental training skills. Those are individual skills, but eventually it also turns into a team thing, of course. And then, with this kind of train of thought, there is it's kind of has always been fascinating for me how much we are depending on each other in our sport. I don't know any other sport where people depend on each other as much as we do. I really don't. Maybe somebody can come up with something where it is similar, or if one of us is not functioning in free fall, it's over. If you play soccer, you have a bench. If you're in basketball, in any other sport, you have a bench. If somebody is not performing well, you can change it, or the other guys can carry him or her through. That doesn't work with what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
In 8-way, maybe a little bit easier than in 4-way, Drew. What do you say? Can you carry somebody through in 8-way easier than in 4-way?
The pace may not be quite as fast, but the same principle applies. You definitely need to be firing on all 8 cylinders.
So the dependency on each other, and then specifically in the mental area,
Sure.
mental motivation, being prepared for performance, you know, on the best level possible. That is an incredible responsibility for everybody.
For sure. And I would say actually, I think there are things that we are doing in our weekly calls now. Like when we review video, we're not just debriefing and looking for places that we're screwing up. We're also specifically looking for what we're doing well. And I think that helps build that trust on the team and reminding ourselves of the fact that we are all here for each other and working together. So I do think that makes a big difference for us. And that is something that we're doing right now. Yeah.
Dr. John also said that some of the stuff that we are doing in our sport, we do some kind of a mental training anywhere without ever knowing that this is what we're doing, you know, that we are applying mental training like long ago, 30, 40, 50, well, that's too long, 30, 40 years ago. Mental training was like going to a psychotherapist or whatever, you know. We don't need a shrink, you know, we are alpha male anyway, alpha male and female. So for us in skydiving, going to get the help of a psychologist or you know, a therapist was like, we don't need that. But that has changed, definitely. So right now, you know, this specific Dr. John, he was working with teams like Speed and Sebastian XL. So there was an opening coming. Are you doing any of that? I mean, do you get, do you have training in other areas? You work with, you know, you have had some coaching, Solly and so forth. But in the mental area, have you ever approached that in any way?
Yeah, we have met with a sports psychologist before, and we also we'll read books on the topics and talk about that with each other. Yeah.
What did you get?
So you're absolutely right, Kurt. You know, sports as a whole have shown, and studies have shown that visualization and mental preparation have just as much of effect on you know, the muscle groups that you'd be using if you were performing the act itself, and you know, the physiological activities. You know, they have almost just as much of effect as if we were out jumping. You know, so visualization, while we'd all love to be jumping, visualization is a huge part of the process.
And that has come naturally back to that point, like even 30, 40 years ago, we were visualizing, you know, how else can you get ready for a skydive that the sequence that you see for the first time. So you have to visualize. So, and without ever knowing that we're doing some kind of mental training, I mean, ever since there has been skydiving, I guess, you know, people have visualized and done that kind of stuff, and it is actually mental training, except we didn't really know what we're doing and how we're using it and how to structure it.
Yeah.
Well, what did you get out of it? Did you get the psychologist the sports psychologist that you were working with? What did you get out of it? Anything that is worth mentioning?
It was a while ago.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have to answer that.
Yeah.
No answer. How do you? That is something that you can also. I mean, we're sharing it now with the community, obviously, because you know this will be published. You must be connecting with your following in your community in any other ways, because you cannot meet them in person now, and not at a tunnel, not at a drop zone. People find all kind of ways. I guess that Zoom is now the most popular program on the planet, together with WhatsApp, I guess, and Skype. So what do you do? How do you connect with Doug? Your large following, you know, in 8-way and 4-way. What do you do? How do you keep in touch with them?
Well, I have done a video for PD about a topic about coming back from an injury, and then as well just continuing to stay with plans with the group, like for rhythm. You know, we're doing these video calls, for the 8-way team that I'm running, just kind of staying up to date with the schedule, and if anything changes, just reaching out and making sure that we're all, you know, still talking to each other. Everybody's ready to go when we start up again.
Sorry.
No problem. That happens. Okay, so, but then I'm sure you are doing similar things. I mean, there are so many webinars and seminars and, you know, online meetings and lectures and all that kind of stuff. I would be very surprised if Rhythm has none of that going, you know, while we are on standby here in general.
For sure. Steve and I are doing twice weekly Zoom calls. Some are open to everybody and some are just for the 401 subscribers. And that's been great. We've been doing like, so I did 5 of them were deep dives into each of the blocks, where we talked about 4 blocks each in like an hour 15. And just really, you know, you can spend a lot more time talking about it than you get, you know, right before the tunnel or something. So that's been nice. And then Steve just started his set talking about exits, going through a lot of the details around the exits. So yeah, and that's every Tuesday and Thursday night.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, all those discussions, there's plenty of time for all of that now.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not in a hurry now, you know, so you can be ready for, like, we're going to chat for 2 hours here probably now, like,
yeah.
nothing else to do, although I need the outdoors, so I do bike rides and canoe and all that kind of. I cannot be in the house here, you know, in the office all day long. That's drives me crazy.
Yeah, I kind of like, we have an opportunity right now to, we talk about whether it's about the blocks. Right now I'm talking about exits, but it's a challenge, but also fun to kind of discuss these things on various levels. So in other words, I can say, look, if you're a beginner learning how to do a bow exit, let's say, here are the, you know, 3 things that you should be thinking about. But if you're more advanced, we can start thinking about this. And then, you know, the most, here's everything I'm thinking about. And you can kind of choose the level that's appropriate for you to kind of try to absorb. But because it's in a video that people can watch later as well, because we put it up and we share this stuff on YouTube or through the app, people can kind of on their own pace sort of absorb each level that's appropriate for them, you know. And I think that's kind of a rare and cool opportunity that maybe without this we wouldn't have been able to provide, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I remember, who's that? I remember the last time I was at the drop zone, I don't know, decades ago, that I had a team that I was working with, helping, and it was, the weather didn't allow them to jump, you know, kind of beginner level, and it was too windy or whatever. So, you know, we used the whole day basically to talk. But usually, you know, you go to the drop zone to jump, so you don't really have the time to talk about all those things.
Yeah, for sure.
So
like
maybe
a really long weather hold.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, if you're further in the north, maybe you have better chances with more weather breaks and stuff. But normally we don't have this. So we spend our time, yes, when the weather is bad, now there's time for that. But now there's an opportunity to use it efficiently, now, and in a planned way. Maybe it will even lead to something that in the longer term, maybe there will be something that's more structured, more organized in that area. You know, every Tuesday, it will not be at, when is it now, 10 o'clock or at noon? When do you run those?
7 p.m. Eastern.
7 p.m. Okay. So maybe, who knows, maybe in the future it will be at 8 p.m., you know, after everybody is home, and for an hour, and so who knows what comes out of this, you know, new ways of thinking by now will come naturally out of this.
For sure, yeah.
When has everybody actually jumped or tunneled the last time? When was the last time that you were flying, let's say?
Early March.
Yeah.
Early March.
Middle of March.
Yeah.
March 11th or something like that was our last jump.
Yeah.
How does it feel? I mean, you guys, for me, you know, I make only 10 jumps a year anyway, or, you know, I spend, just kidding, but you know, I'm not so used to flying, you know, the physical part of it. I mean, there is, at least when you're jumping from planes, there's adrenaline involved, there's endorphin, and you know, the system is used to something that you do on a regular basis. And tunnel, I don't know how much of that is involved in when you're flying the tunnel, but do you feel something like this, like kind of maybe even something like an unrest, or your body feels like there's something missing, or you do that all the time? So sorry. Somebody was
sure. I mean, well, unfortunately, I've been through the not jumping before, and yeah, you do feel like that, like almost like a need or a want, like, you know, you need to fulfill this drive inside of you. But you know, we're doing the best that we can, and mentally preparing and doing the visualization and meetings and stuff like that does help. But you know, it's also good, just shows us that we want to jump as much as we can, you know, that we still have the drive to do it.
That you're missing it. It's a good feeling. Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah, that is a good feeling. So it's not like a cold turkey kind of thing. What is that? What you call it? Like after the hangover thing, when you get up, you're missing your your drug.
Withdrawal.
Withdrawal. So it's not physical like that. Like when you are stopped to smoke cigarettes. Is it similar like that? I don't know. I can't tell. You know, again, I'm not. You're making 1,000 jumps a year and 1,000 hours of wind tunnel time probably per year. So it's different for you than it is for me.
It's definitely a bit of a unique opportunity as well. You know, unlike other sports, skydiving doesn't have, excuse me, much of an off season. You know, you finish whatever your outdoor competition season is, and you generally take some small time off, and you roll right into the indoor competition season. So I know for me back here in North Carolina, it's almost like like it would be a normal off season for a sport. It's time to recover. It's time to study. You know, it's time to work on self and personal development. And another thing I think that's just remarkable, community leaders like Steve and Jeanette and Doug, you know, reaching out through PD and just community leaders of a whole have really shown how resilient our sport is by creating so much digital content and drawing people back into the fold. And keeping them interested in skydiving and still learning through the process, even though we can't go through the actual act of jumping. So for me, I'm just looking at it like it's an off season. It's time to get healthy. It's time to get smarter. It's time to build some resiliency, work on my family, work on my professional and personal development. So that way, by the time, you know, the weather's good and airplanes start running again, we'll be that much more primed to go.
Yeah, by the way, having you, Drew, the military jumping is still considered essential as far as I know. We even skydived yesterday morning. I heard the pack take off, and I went to the drop zone to see what's going on there. And there were parachutes in the air, jump plane in the air, but the drop zone was closed. You couldn't even get in anywhere, all locked down. So I called, and they said, yeah, it's military training. So are you jumping or?
No. I think those stipulations are more for you know, the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that are working to fulfill a combat inherent role. You know, obviously the military stands ready to deploy at a moment's notice to face our nation's enemies, and they need to be ready to do that. But from the Golden Knights standpoint, we don't have that combat role, so we're following local, state, community, and Fort Bragg guidances with the.
Okay.
We have no plans to return to jumping until the pandemic and our nation and state leaders, you know, advise us it's safe to do so.
So the competition team is in the same situation basically as everybody else.
And we are, yes.
The recent one topic that I still would like to bring to you quickly is, I mentioned it earlier briefly. It is coincidence that the topic of amateur teams, pro teams, full-time teams recently came up. It came also out of the past, out of the archives, you know, we're leading to that. How do you consider yourself? Well, you know, you're not an amateur team, obviously. What is the difference? Are you a full-time team or a full-time skydiver or a pro team or pro skydiver? Drew, you know, as a military militarily employed. So what are the, how can you define this? Is there a definition? Doug, you are ready to speak up.
Can you elaborate on the question? I mean,
Yeah.
So we are a professional team and we're a full-time team. I work in the sport full-time, and that's where I generate the majority of my income, if that's the question.
That is the question. I mean, as of how we do what we do, you know, that there are people who are doing it all kind of different ways. You know, there are packers, there are people who work at the manifest, there are coaches, there are teams. Drew Drew, I would say, and probably the Qatar Tigers or Hayabusa, you're probably what I would call pro teams, but I don't know. Is that what we would call a team that is being actually employed to train and compete?
Oh, so are you asking if our source of income is from competing, if that makes us professional? I mean, I would consider us professional. We just have our main source of revenue is from coaching or running events or things like that. But we're making money from the sport, working in the sport.
Yeah, and beyond that, it's not like Rhythm is just a competitive team and all four of us or all six of us make money separately through skydiving. The team has a competitive side, and then we also have a business side that we've developed over the last 12 years that gives us all a source of income so that we can afford to live and train, you know, and that's the Rhythm skydiving business side. So I think, you know, from that standpoint, I consider us a professional team because we're not just because we're competing together as a team, but because we're working and building a business together, you know, and we have been for the last
and that
decade.
is similar, that's probably similar like airspeed or similar, you know, concept. I guess they do this.
Yeah, I guess so. I think we're a little bit different in that I think I don't really know how their business model works, but I think ours is a little more like collaborative. Like we put together tunnel camps together, and we split the profits together and all that kind of stuff. We have some of our own projects on our own, but mostly everything we do is under the Rhythm business.
Would you be able to define, I mean, you remember, I'm sure you do remember very well, the transition from whatever you call it? Well, that would be the next question. What is an amateur team then? I mean, it's a team probably or skydivers who have a job and they go and spend their money for skydiving or team training or anything. But I've no doubt that this transition from doing that to what you do now, can you put a finger on that? Can you explain when it happened and how it happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two sides to it, right? There's the competitive side and trying to become an open team that's competitive nationally and in the world. And then there's the, you know, how do you eat side. And for Steve and I, there was a very specific moment when we stopped having real jobs, and all of the money we were making was coming from skydiving. And can you close the door, Steve? So that was the moment that we were, you know, I guess you could say we were professional skydivers because we were making all our money from skydiving. But at that point, we were still maybe doing an 18 average and we were competing in open class, but we weren't yet on the world stage, I would say. So there's kind of two sides to it, I think, at least for us, you know, but we've as we've gone, we've built our business so that it could support a team to also train full-time like we needed to be competitive nationally and internationally.
So that was a soft transition. Drew and Doug, you did the similar transition just a little bit later. What do you remember? Was it a decision from like a you know, from one day to the next, or was it also kind of a soft transition into this?
I mean, I think it was more of a soft transition. For me, I was always working in the sport full time. Like it went straight pretty much from college to then getting my ratings, and then we worked as tandem instructors, AFF instructors, and trained as much as we could through then. And then we had a great relationship with Skydive Carolina that helped us so that we could train during the week and work on the weekends. So it was just kind of progressing through, until we got to the point where then we joined Rhythm and kind of made that another transition. But it was more of a soft transition, just kind of always working in the sport and then working as much as I could to train as much as I could and kind of using that as motivation.
Justin, you're so quiet there. You are in the middle of the transition.
Right.
Whatever, if you're making this transition, I don't know, if you have made it already or, so how is that for you? You're the latest one now.
Yeah, so it's a little bit unique for me because I've kept my university position that I have. And so there's a lot of flexibility though with the position. So I've been able to work it out so far. But I am new, so there's more ahead to see how it will go. But definitely, like I have my summers off, so that's prime skydiving season time. And again, the flexibility has been really great.
How do you draw the line? The famous unofficial amateur teams that I'm mentioning once in a while, which is, I don't know how popular that is to say something like it's critical, I know that, because nobody really, there's no definition for it, and we're all competing on the same leaderboards with and against each other. Where is that line? There is a significant difference between full-time teams, professional teams, and competitors, and amateur teams, so-called amateur teams. Does anybody have an idea how that line can be drawn? Or you're in both worlds. You are dealing a lot with the amateurs, let's call them. Forgive me if somebody doesn't like this word or but that's what I am. That's what most of us are as of skydiving compared to the top performers. How you would define that?
I think skydiving is really unique in the fact that maybe that line of delineation isn't quite so important. Like a lot of sports, I'm an amateur golfer. I couldn't walk onto the PGA Tour or compete at the U.S. Open. But one of the great things about skydiving is that amateurs can walk onto our U.S. Open, our U.S. Nationals, and compete side by side with professionals. And I think that's one of the things that just makes our sport so incredible. It's the reason we come together in times of crisis like this, is because we're all while we're all in the same boat, and maybe some of us have more experience or a higher scoring average, at the end of the day, we're all still at the heart of wanting to work and get better and have fun in doing, this thing that we love. And you're right, it's hard to draw, it's maybe not the difference between Major League Baseball and AAA ball. But it's just an incredible community where we can all come together, regardless of work backgrounds or scoring average or time and experience in the sport. And we can all stand and compete shoulder to shoulder and be enemies for 35 seconds at a time, and then be great friends once we all land again.
Yeah. And I find that fascinating, actually, that, especially on the wind tunnel, even more so than at the drop zones, where you can be just shoulder to shoulder with a world champion, as a rookie class competitor. And that's fascinating. Has always been fascinating for me, actually. That's why I'm doing it, actually, because I love the heroes in the sport, even though I'm a rookie compared. So that is a very special thing, Drew. Thanks for bringing this up.
I think that line you're talking about, Kurt, is a lot in up here or in here, whatever you feel, wherever you're feeling and your team is feeling at that time. I think this comes up a lot when people talk about the requirements for intermediate and advanced and open. Right. And personally, I think, and this is, I don't even know if everybody on my team shares this feeling, but I feel like the rules, like the reason why Rhythm doesn't compete in intermediate or advanced, it's not because we're not allowed to. If you erased all those rules, we wouldn't compete in advanced or open or intermediate because we don't want it, you know. And I feel like we don't, you know, our goal is on the open class, you know. I feel like you could relax those rules and just say, you know, if it's important to you to win advanced, then that's awesome. Go do that, you know. And then at some point it won't be, and then don't do that, you know.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say, let's say, if you have a 9-to-5 job, you are an amateur, and if you are working on the drop zone or in the wind tunnel, you are not?
I don't know. I just
Not
think,
really,
especially, I mean, and this isn't unique to skydiving. I think people now are like jobs and work and how people make money and is becoming a lot less like traditional than what our grandparents used to do, where you would go work 9 to 5 and you would work for the same company for your whole life, and then you retire at 65. And, you know, like, I think people are finding, you know, different ways to live and enjoy themselves, you know, and make a living and pursue their passion. And sometimes your career and your the passion that you're pursuing don't have to be the same thing, you know. And so I think some people are able to pursue their goal and their passion and what they want to be, and then maybe their passion is being a teacher or traveling or something that doesn't historically make a ton of money, and then they maybe code on the side to you know. So I think as people more and more are realizing that you don't have to define yourself by your job, and you can just have a job that makes you the money you make, and have a passion that defines your self and your worth, you know. And that's not unique to skydiving. I think people are starting to realize that in general. So I don't think what you do defines who you are in another part of your life. So I think you could be a full-time skydiver and make all your money coding in the evenings or doing whatever it is that makes you money. And you could work in skydiving and not be as serious a 4-way competitor as somebody who's making their money somewhere other way. I think it's just they're not related anymore as much.
Yeah, good point.
But probably the best way to figure out if a team is a professional or full-time team is to ask that team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll probably give you a pretty good answer.
So the questionnaire that when you sign up somewhere for EMeter, so and it should include amateur or Czech amateur team, pro team, full team, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Ask them directly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then, in the times of the Corona, how is the rhythm franchising? Have you employed for small business loans from the government programs? So what I mean, this is all. Being a pro, you're suffering when your business isn't there any longer, you know. So, or you just kind of try to hold your breath as long as possible until everything is coming back. I mean, we have to put groceries on the table, or what do you say, bread on the table, or
Yeah. I mean, a few good skills that I think we've learned from skydiving and starting to earn a living skydiving is you learn how to live cheap when you need to.
That's true.
What we're doing right now.
Good. Let's live cheap. Hopefully we'll have to live cheap not for too much longer, but I guess we'll find out soon. Well,
I think while we all are kind of a conglomerate rhythm, we do, when it comes down to each have our own entity, you know. So we have to each figure out what's best for ourselves and take care of yourself that way.
Yeah, we have families and, you know, friends and relatives and all that. There's still the normal life, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I remember I have some children too, right? Yeah, they're somewhere.
As you can see, my family's living with me in South Carolina right now to kind of help my sister out with her family and be a little bit closer and help each other out through these times. So
that's another good thing, actually, that comes with the crisis. I haven't seen now the minor teenagers, 18, 20, 22. So they have their own life story. I've never seen them as many times and as frequently and regularly as now. So, you know, so that is maybe also a good thing coming along with it.
It is nice.
Yeah.
That's definitely that's a good point, Kurt. Like, my brother's about to go to grad school, and this time, like, we would never be able to spend this much time together, or like for me to go see my nephews and have this quality time with them and kind of build a bond there is something that we can look positively on for sure.
Schools are closed, universities are closed, they're online stuff, but you know, so Annika is back. She's in North Carolina usually. She's here now. And so that is some kind of, so we always have to look at the good things anyway, because there are always good things coming along with it.
Yeah.
All right, SDC Rhythm XP in the middle of the coronavirus crisis. And we spent probably, I don't know, more time than ever together in a NSL live talk session. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kurt.
Taking the
Thank you,
time
Kurt.
Our pleasure.
Okay.
and
Thank you.
openly discussing all those interesting topics.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Keep
Thanks,
healthy
you too.
and in good shape, and hopefully we'll be back soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will.
Yeah, for
We will.
sure.
Mhm.